This is Mike McGetrick. He is the principal and co-founder at Spark 451. I've gotten the privilege to be able to work with and know him for a while. So he's got a great session lined up for you today talking about your storefront, the web, and your CRM and the relationship between the two and how those work. So without further ado, Mike McGetrick, everyone.
Thanks so much, man. So hi, everybody. Great to see you and great to be here. Love the energy at Element Engage always, every year. Since you're all here, you all love CRMs, and since you're all working in enrollment marketing, at some level, you either love or hate your website. So this session is for you. So a little bit about me. I have a long history of working in enrollment marketing, in higher ed marketing, and digital marketing in general. You may have noticed company name is Spark 451. Sounds very similar, right, to Element 451, and there's a reason for that. We go way back. Spark 451 we founded about 13 years ago, and out of Spark 451 came the product Element 451, which spun out into its own company and became very, very successful in its own right, which is fantastic. But we're separate companies, but we remain very close with close partnerships, and we do a lot of work in Element instances, work with about 30 different schools using Element. And I also do work in about 25 different websites a year in the .edu space. So I have lots of experience, my team and I have lots of experience connecting the university website with Element 451 CRM. So I want to take sort of a broad look at just some conceptual ground on how these things work together, and then get into enough technical detail to either get you in trouble or have some resources to use when you get back on campus to do some more deeper implementation on your own .edu and Element instance. So I'll start with a little story. Both of my parents grew up on farms. I did not. I grew up in New York City. But my father used to tell me some stories, and one particular farm story he told, perhaps to motivate me to work hard, was about this old farmer on his deathbed. And he told his children that there was a great treasure hidden in the fields that they owned. And upon his death, his children went and dug deeply into those fields, dug every inch of it up, and weren't finding any gold or anything like that. But they found over time that having dug the fields up, tilling them, planting them, that a great harvest had come, a greater than they had ever experienced before. And so they knew at that point that their farmer dad had somewhat tricked them, but had taught them a lesson that it's really about the hard work you put into something that yields the rewards. And I think there's an analogy there for our work here today on the website. Our website is this broad surface that many of our students interact with, and sort of this entry point. And there's this deep layering of interactions that take place on it. Students look at our pages, they fill out our forms, they interact with the Element chatbot. We trigger web flows off of it. We can do behavioral marketing with it. And only when we integrate our CRM with this can great things happen. Can we uncover the riches, unearth the treasure that's within those layers, and make some cool things happen. So let's get into it a little bit. So I want to talk a little bit about developing this high-level framework for connecting web and CRM, have you walk away with this connection. Talk about journey mapping, how we can, in a very practical way, orchestrate this connection. Leverage the two together to do something called behavioral marketing, responding to student behavior. And then understand some of the unique connections between how we can activate our website in Element, and some very cool things. So let's start here. We have our three elements of, no pun intended, three elements of this connection. We have our prospective student, of course, we have our website, and we have our CRM. So there's interactions between each, right? Between our CRM and our prospective student, we have all sorts of communications, either one-to-many or one-to-one. Chatting with them, messaging them, group text, group emails, lots of communication going on. When our prospective student interacts on our website, they're showing signs, signals of their intent. What are they interested in? What do they want to focus on? What do they want to do? And that signal is being captured on our website analytics. And then between the CRM and our website, we have data passing back and forth. We have our analytics packages. We have all sorts of opportunity to create this virtual circle of connecting our communications to a user's intent and feeding it back. And that's our focus here. And the result of this becomes a great way to do personalized marketing. The ultimate goal of marketing is to deliver the right message to the right person at the right time. And we all know good things happen when that occurs. We can remember some important moments where we were able to send the right message to the right group of people, and they responded. They attended that event. They actually took that action that they were missing. They filled out that form. They submitted that missing document. Or they opened things at a higher rate than before because we sent them the right content that they needed in that moment. So let's start here. There's a very familiar model to all of you, I'm sure, the classical enrollment funnel. We have this sort of wide tip of the funnel at the top where we have just people being aware of your school. Then they start to engage, they inquire, show a little interest. Maybe they'll fill out an application, get admitted, deposited, enrolled, and then ultimately become your advocates, alumni. So let's think about this in a way of touch points, right? Where in the very beginning, you have all sorts of opportunity for the student to become aware of you, right? They learn about it from friends. They may have done their own research, attended a college fair, looked up some rankings, visited your .edu website. Those initial touch points that you may or may not have the possibility to influence. Further down the line, when they're ready to inquire, you might be doing some marketing, right? You might be running a student search campaign out of Element, running some social ads on your website. You may be doing pay-per-click, doing good SEO, writing some blogs. And they'll ultimately, hopefully, at this point, start to inquire, fill out your forms, right? You'll nurture them a little bit, send them more personalized messages as you know a little more about them. Attend webinars, fill out the online app, get admitted. So look at all these touch points where Element is there, where the .edu website is present. Each one of these represents an opportunity to optimize that marketing channel, that connection, that touch point. And it goes on, right? Element, adding retention, working with alumni, using it in all these different ways. So lots of value continues. This is sort of like a one way of looking at the student journey, right? There are other ways, of course. I have another model that I like to use. This is very small for a reason, because there's a lot of detail. This is sort of my template for mapping a student journey, and it doesn't have the full, complete journey in it. I haven't filled it out completely, but I just want to give you it as a model, right? It's the same sort of stages, but there's a lot more detail to it, right? When we're mapping out with a school the student journey, we'll go into a lot more detail like this, like what actions are they taking, what are they thinking, what are they feeling. And then you notice there's a little chart in the middle there. It's called the mood metric. It's like, how are they feeling at a particular point in time? They may be excited, when they first inquire or visit your campus. So their mood's going up, they're feeling happy. But at some point, they're maybe got frustrated on your site. They couldn't find what they needed. They submitted an application and they had to wait for an answer for a long time, and their mood kind of dropped a little bit. So how many people here do some kind of student journey mapping? Okay, so very few in fact. I would really encourage you to do this on your campus. And when you do it, really think about what the student is feeling at that moment. And how can you use the technologies that we're talking about here today to have an influence there, right? If a student couldn't find what they were looking for on your website, was there an opportunity to use the Element chatbot, right, to intervene there, to give them that answer, to use AI? If it's a lot of students are surfing after hours, and your staff has gone home, but they're active, and what they'll normally do is look at the website, they can't find it, they'll go on your social channels, try to get an answer, and if they can't find what they're looking for, they're just gonna abandon it, right? They're gonna maybe leave and go somewhere else. So lots of opportunity here for you to think about this experience, and you'll notice the sort of rows down here talking about opportunities, ideas. So like, these are your chances to be creative and say, well, in this moment, when I'm trying to create awareness, here are some things I can do. And here are some ideas I have about accomplishing them. So I would encourage you with your teams to sit down and do this, to map this out. If you want to do things in a very orchestrated way. So when you're doing this, as I'm encouraging you to do, just think about some really important things, right? Your objective, of course, in an enrollment marketing program might not always be more enrollment, might be more representation, might be an academic profile, might be a geographic footprint you're looking to accomplish. Think about the systems and operations you have in place. What does your admissions funnel pipeline look like internally? And are you adapting to new trends? Like, are things moving? Are students showing up on Reddit, for example? Are they using TikTok? Of course they're using TikTok, but are they interacting on those channels, and are you adapting that journey to the trends that they're moving into? So I encourage you to think about all these marketing activities you take place with, kind of like the spokes, and at the hub of it all are our web and CRM. So we're constantly doing things like creating content, doing our email marketing, our text messaging, promoting events, on the paid side of things, running ads, running search campaigns, SEO. And the overlapping of those two, the conversion moments, right, and our analytics. Such an important role here. So for your websites, is anyone in the middle of or starting or thinking about doing a web redesign right now? By the process? Okay, so that's a handful of people, right? So you're probably thinking about a lot of these questions, right? What does a good web experience look like? So we do a lot of surveys, and we do a lot of website redesigns in our place. And so I've created this list, which is succinct enough to discuss here today, but represents kind of the things we want to optimize on. So most of the .edu sites we look at, the prospective student traffic is about 65% mobile. So about 2/3 of the students, when they're surfing, are using their mobile phones. So you need a strong mobile capability right out of the bat. When we do surveys, the biggest challenge we are often cited is they can't find what they're looking for. We spend a lot of time, if you're doing that web redesign, on navigation and information architectures, academics, admissions, contact us. And they're very, very similar across websites, like university. So similar, in fact, that when Pixar came out with Monsters University, they were able to do a .edu website for Monsters University. And it looked like any other website. It was very impressive, very, very fun. So when they can't find what they're looking for, they'll go to your search, or they'll go to Google and try to find what they're looking for, because they're just not using these information architectures that we're used to setting up anymore. They just want to find it instantly. They're used to it. So making sure we have good search in place is really important. Next up, great content. Well written, easy to understand, and really not too much of it. They're looking for brevity. There are some great tools out there that you can measure the reading level of your content. The Hemingway app is one example that will give you the grade level. And believe it or not, if you're targeting potential college students, you really want to get it at an 8th grade level in order for it to be comprehensible for most students who want to move through quickly. Clear calls to action. What do I do next? I read a page. At the bottom of it, there should be another action, another link for more information, or the next subject you want to know about. Next up, a really awesome experience when it comes to looking at your programs, your portfolio of courses, degrees, however we refer to them, but really a really great experience around that. And then our last two, accessible and SEO friendly, of course, that's a given, but a personalized experience. And I think this is where our CRM connection becomes really important, and is the next generation really of the web experience. There's things you can do without the CRM to make it more personalized, more explicit, right? Telling someone, hey, choose an undergraduate or graduate pathway, or looking at a particular set of pages that they looked at and then summarizing that into a persona. But connecting the CRM directly is where it's at. So looking at some of the essentials here, our first piece of connection we want to talk about is lead capture, all right? That's paramount for most of us in the room that are enrollment driven, right? If I'm talking to admissions people, this is usually the number one thing that they want. They want more of. I want more leads to be captured for my website. I want more students who are anonymous to let me know who they are. Now, I can address them anonymously, I can retarget them anonymously, but having them let us know who they are gives us a real advantage to work with them and really up that CRM connection. So that's job one, right? We do a lot of conversion rate optimization with different schools, NYU being one of them. And so there's a couple of things that I just want to bring up here. NYU asked us to help them do conversion rate optimization off their website. They get a lot of traffic, an enormous amount. And it really came down to doing some simple adjustments. They had their request information button buried down below, and just by moving it into this header right here, we were able to literally increase their leads off this page by 60%. And it's about visibility and about moving things up. But that's not the total picture. So remember that list, clear calls to action, right? So letting students know what they can do to take the next step, right? Making that very clear and visible. But then also, when they get to a certain point, this is actually another school, scrolling down a little bit, they've moved through a page, and that's another opportunity for you to actually see that lead gen form there, being available inline, and making an offer, actually showing them something, reciprocating their action. That piece is really important. People want something in return for their time, for their information. What are you giving me in return? In direct marketing parlance, we say there are three inputs to a conversion. First is targeting the right people. The second is making a good offer. And then the third is having good creative, a good mechanism for making it happen. Here's one more example. This is another graduate admissions website focused on counseling, and we had done a redesign with them, redesigning all their academic pages and the whole website. In fact, they use Element. And just by having this request information button on every academic program page, we also were able to increase leads off the website by about 70% from before. So this one example, you click on it and it actually scrolls to the bottom. So you have that Element lead gen form there. So there's two things there, right? It's actually having the visibility of the request information button, but then when people scroll through, there's actually something for them to do. So having that in both places, having it active, inline, ready to go, ready to act upon. All right. So a couple of points on this. Element has both a page builder in it, a landing page builder, as well as the ability to embed their forms on your website. So I encourage you, whenever possible, to do both, right? There's contextual reasons for both, right? If you're doing just your typical website where people are doing self-discovery, you should be embedding Element forms there. If you're doing, let's say, specialized marketing campaigns and you don't want your web group involved, you don't want your IT group involved, or they're too busy, the Element page builder is fantastic for helping build pages there. So definitely do both. Track the sources. And one other tip is that the Element form, you can set the default for the academic program. So you can select the program that is specific to the page you want it embedded on and have a specific embed code for that. So if you had 41 different master's programs, you can have a different embed code for each one, and that'll be the default selected on there. Going a little further on this, some tips on building forms in Element for conversion. First of all, if you want to have as few fields as possible. Now that's a little bit against the grain when it comes to the information needs you might have. So the way to actually implement this is using Element's two-part forms, right? So if you want to say, like, have high conversion, have fewer fields, all right? 3, 4, 5 fields at the first inquiry point is really important to have that really short. And if you want to capture additional details, add the two-part form. I'm looking at Christina Fowler here in the front row here. We did a lot of forms together for Rochester Institute of Technology, capturing rich data. And we find that when people are filling out, if they filled out the first part of the form, 75% of them will fill out the second part of the form. So if you want to capture more leads, fewer fields on the first step. Important information there. All right. Tracking conversions, really important for measuring ROI of your marketing. All right. You want to make sure you're having UTM variables captured. Element does a great job natively capturing UTM variables, which is our industry standard for market tracking data. So how do we do that? So this is an example of a URL, a website with a string that has marketing variables appended to it, all right? Element natively parses these and captures these. When you're setting up your emails, let's say going out for a search campaign, you can embed these in your builder there, in your token configurations. When you're doing your digital ads, if you're running ads, make sure you have all of the tracking variables in your links, your query string, and they will be captured into Element. But that's not all there is to it, right? There is a little additional setup for the web and tracking things. We use something called Google Tag Manager, which allows us to fire events letting the system know that something has happened, right? So the Element form fires an event called form submit. But we need to let our different systems know that this is in fact something we want to track. So we use Google Tag Manager to set that up as a trackable event, all right? So you'll either need your IT group to help you with this or some other consultant. And in our Google Analytics instance, on our web analytics, we set that event that we've just created to be a conversion. So this is an example of some conversions that we've specified, form submit being one of them. And with this in mind, all your conversions will show up in your Google Analytics 4 package. And why is this important? This is important at the very macro level to understand the effectiveness of your website. What parts of the content are people looking at? So it's being captured simultaneously into Element and into Google Analytics, so you know things are happening. So really important stuff to do there. All right. So where do these parameters go? They're in each user's profile. If you look under profile info, they'll appear there so you'll know when you're talking to someone, or you can query, create segments based on these, which individuals came from what efforts, and when your president or dean asks you, at the end of the year, where was your marketing spend? You can actually let them know and be able to track it yourself, which is important. One last pro tip. CMO people mentioned magic links before. Element magic links are in fact magic, and you can do great things. Remember, I talked about that two-part form thing, right? So let's say I said 3 out of 4 people who filled out the first part didn't fill out the second part, right? Is there a way for me to go back and get people to fill out that second part, maybe as a follow-up a week later? Hey, we want to know a little bit more about you. And there is, in fact, a great functionality in Element landing pages that allows us to insert these tokens. These slides will be available, so you can see this little strip there. This is, in fact, an example of a magic link in Element that will link to a landing page and preload somebody's data in the form. So if it just so happens to be a 2-part form, I can put some special wording that says, hey, give us, click part 2 and fill out the second part. So if you're building rich profiles on people's motivations, why do you want to attend college? What's your reason for taking this course? And that's queryable data, right? It's not just survey data that's on macro. It's rich data you'll have about that person and their motivations. So really encourage you to utilize this great feature of Element to create those richer profiles. Okay. Automated workflows are really important. This may be obvious, but you want to be automated as much as possible. When someone does something on your website for you, fills out a form, for example, you want to be able to reciprocate, right? Always reciprocate. So our workflow engine in Element 451 is outstanding, allows us to do complex things after someone submits a form to us, right? As simple as triggering an email to them, right? But I can add other things onto this, right? I can add a task for a counselor to follow up with a phone call. I can add them to a segment. So without question, use your form submissions as triggers for rich workflows that accomplish the things you want to do. Chatbots. I mentioned before about that point in time where students become frustrated, right? A lot of students are surfing your website in the evening hours, in the late hours when you're not there. And I think it's a really valuable tool to have one-on-one interaction when the counselors can answer using the Element Messenger chatbot. But when they can't, having a really powerful tool like BoltBot, I think, is extraordinary. And the way it ingests your web content and can have different personas to answer questions and avoid that moment of frustration and give someone the information they need in that moment is extraordinary. And there's going to be a really great session on that tomorrow. Was that 2 o'clock tomorrow, Artis? Yeah. So they're going to cover that in depth, and I would encourage you to attend that. I think it's quite a breakthrough on the Web-CRM connection and that ability to create a greater experience for our prospective students going through the funnel and avoiding those frustrations, avoid them, going out to social channels and complaining about us. Okay, this one's a little deeper and a little more in depth, but behavioral marketing is, one of the things that's been a holy grail for me. The ability to understand a student's intent and motivation and being able to respond to them. So in Element, we have the ability to respond to student behavior in a couple of ways. So the foundations are that we are in some way tracking their activity on the website, what programs they're looking at, what pages they're looking at, and we're ingesting this into Element 451 and matching it to the student. The important piece here is that this is tracking data that's identified. So we must have consent to do that. So if you implement this piece, we need to have one of those cookie consent bars, right, to be legally conforming. And we must have a privacy policy that lets people know what we're doing with that data. So there are some really good examples out there if you don't have one. But you're basically letting people know that you are tracking their activity for the purposes of making a greater experience for them. If you're using Google Analytics, you're tracking activity anonymously. If you're implementing web tracking in Element, you are identifying the person and their activity, and you're using it to create a greater experience. And you must articulate that to them to comply with the law. So what are the components of it? We got our Element Pixel, which is a little piece of code we drop in. Use Tag Manager for that. We have the user's profile that shows us that activity. So if we are talking to someone, we can know if they're active on our site or they're a hot prospect. They've been checking out a ton of pages. We can segment groups based on their activity. Like say, this group's really interested in business. We know that because they've been checking out our business pages. We can build emails with dynamic content. And we can set workflow and timing based on those. So user profile, the activity will appear in their profile. So there's a tab for activity in Element. Showing the pages. If we click on each one, there's a little more rich data about each one. Where they come from, where they referred from, what page was it, what time did it occur. We can also think about time of day as a persona, right? Element. It's like say these are night people, right? I like adding that to personas too. It's sort of like these are my night people. I need to call them at night. They're surfing at night. So the way we do this, is how many people are actually doing this now, have the element pixel running on their site? Oh my gosh, what a great opportunity. This is incredible. What an enormous opportunity. All right, so you're all in the right place. All right, so we add our element pixel to our pages. It fires, it's tracking activity, and we can build segments based on that activity. This quick example is someone who went on our site and looked at our tuition page, tuition and fees. That's sometimes, for me, as a higher ed marketer, the order of when they look at tuition is really important for me. There's a profile of students who look at tuition and are gone, and they never look at another page again. So that lets me know I need to communicate something about financial aid and value on that page, that sticker price, not using those words, but that there's a miscommunication there about what things really cost. But anyway, building this segment, we can build a segment based on students who looked at that page, and a best practice is, if I want to trigger something to them, that it's very timely, within the last day. And I'll build a communication that responds to them. I think this is really important also because when you are sending nurture emails or a communication stream, it's on your own timeline. Maybe you send one a week. And that person may not be ready to receive that email in that moment. They may not be ready for that message. But if they're looking at the website for that page, they are in fact interested in that moment in that subject. So I'm triggering in a very timely, right message, right time. And so triggering it and then segmenting, adding, Element's dynamic content is extraordinary. Being able to, swap things out by funnel stage and adding additional layers of personalization to these messages as they go out. Importantly, setting the workflow and timing. I don't like to be creepy, so I don't typically trigger the email right away to let the person know that we're watching them in that moment. We've all had that experience of, surfing a website and, that sneakers, they come right back up. They're like, wow, that's pretty creepy. And they never go away for like months. So we usually like to put a 24-hour delay on it. And there's some great things. So I want to mention that some analytics on this. One school we had, they had really good open rates on the emails, about 40%. And these emails that got triggered based on the behavior were about a 90% open rate. So people were really engaged, really, really engaged. I think pop-ups are another thing I just wanted to mention. Like, there are tools you can deploy on your website that allow you to trigger a pop-up commercially. Like, you could do it based on people looked at 4 pages and didn't do an action, right? You could just pop things up. I know it's a feature on the Element 451 roadmap, so look for that down the road as another way for behavioral targeting. Events. Events are really important for us. Element has an extraordinary event manager. Does lots of great things for online. It's Zoom integration. If you're not using it, also check it out. You promote your events, of course. You send emails and text messages about encouraging people to go out there. If you want to integrate events on your .edu site, there's a couple of ways of doing it, depending on your level of complexity, but you can ingest, there's a JSON feed, which is a data feed, and you can ingest it into a calendar. We've done that, built a plugin for it. There's another, which is using the Element API. So an example, this is the Element website visit portal. And this is the same information ingested onto the .edu using a plugin. So this is more like when you're ingesting into a calendar. And I found this to be a little less useful in terms of usability for lots of schools. So what we're doing instead is we are just building a simple WordPress plugin to ingest blocks of event data to publish on your website. So if you have any, like, on your admissions page, you want to show your events that are embedded in Element right on your site, this plugin will be available in a couple of weeks. If anybody uses WordPress, it's going to be freely available. All right. Next up, quickly, there's a really cool feature of Element that it connects with this technology called Zapier. And you can do things like connect to external software. So you can create segments that will allow you to build audiences that will go into Facebook. So you can target people on Facebook matching, which I think is another great web connection, right? So it's a ability to retarget your people directly, send them content. It's not always necessary either to expect someone to take a very specific action when you show them something on the web, right? When you show them a banner. So I like sharing your blog info as a way of retargeting, so it's a little bit of softer. If you have good content, good web content that you want to push out to them, don't always ask them to do something. Say, here's some great information that you should check out, which requires you, of course, to have good content, but it's not always absolutely necessary to have them need to take a specific action. It's more of a soft conversion. If someone clicks that, soft conversion. All right, my little treatise here wouldn't be complete without talking about Element's microsite feature, which I consider an extension of your web experience for the students. How many people are using Element microsites? All right, also enormous opportunity. So for those who don't know, Element has this microsite feature that allows you to build full-featured sites, if you will. But they're beyond websites in the sense that you can totally personalize the experience. You can have blocks of content that are individual, right? Any token we could drop in, first name. We can have blocks of content that are targeted to individual segments, so by major. So we build pages with careers, we build pages with salaries for those careers. We can bring in profiles of video blocks that are specific to the major that the student is in. Incredible opportunity to personalize that experience. And it just really flows from your website. And it is private and secure. So whatever you do on there is always going to be fully compliant because it is in fact password protected. All right, so they kind of look like this in their admit is example of the first name. This is the admit role. But they look like this and they look fantastic out of the box, and you have the capability of implementing these kinds of things. So examples would be post-application stage, typically used for admitted yield when someone's deep into your funnel and they've applied already, opportunity to bring stuff in there. Yep. All right, and the last thing I'm going to talk about is just behavioral models, the ability to quantify someone's interest using some kind of model, right? And the web is a great way of building into that as a variable, number of pages visited, the events they attended, emails clicked or open, interactions with a counselor. One thing we do at Spark is we use Element's Snowflake data lake integration, and we ingest all of that data and build these models in there in our Enrolytics dashboard platform. And it integrates all the web analytics, everything in one space. So it's a great opportunity for sharing that data with other people throughout the organization, your president, your provost, give them something to actually see the activity that's going on in there without having to be an Element itself. So the big takeaways to this are, number one, there is buried treasure in the web and CRM connection. There's lots of opportunity there for you. For all of you here today, to better integrate element into your site. I encourage you to sketch out the process, maybe an ideal process, a student journey map, a flow, regardless of whether you think you can implement it or not. Just sketch it out in a way that you'd like it to be, and then try to fill in the gaps. And ultimately just put it into action and involve as many people as you can on your campus to make it happen, and be creative and have lots of fun. And that's it for me. We're almost at time, but I will take, we have like 4 minutes, I can take a couple of questions.
Is there kind of a list of things that are no longer necessary on a website? Like, we have everything for everybody all the time, and everyone wants to be on the front page. So it's like the entire Encyclopedia Britannica above the fold. Like, are there things that we could...
Yeah. If you've been in this business for a while, you may recall people talking about the list of things that people want on the homepage and the list of things that students want on the homepage, and like none of them align. Maybe one out of them. That was like a thing going on like 10 years ago. The number one thing students want is they want to look at programs, right off the bat. Like, do you have my major? And if so, what is the experience like? And so that's an essential. The other thing I would say is, one student told me in a focus group that it needs to be like a movie. It's like I need to be able to have like an establishing shot of where the campus is and what are the students doing on that campus. So like having that sort of story being told on the homepage, I think, is really important. So it's a mobile first experience, right? So when people are interacting mobilely, there should be an analogous flow between the architecture of the site and the architecture of the homepage. So if it's academics, admissions, student life, contact us, that representative flow should be the structure of your homepage, because it's with a thumb flowing, they're expecting to be able to get to those parts vertically, not just in the navigation. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I think we got time for one more question, if there is one out there.
Everybody understood everything? Implemented tomorrow? All right, well, my email's up there. If anybody would like to talk about any of this, have a conversation, be happy to. I could talk about this all day. It's something I cherish and love. I taught web design for 17 years at the college level, and just, love the experience.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike. Let's hear it for him.